This very important event tonight. My name is Catherine Moore. Like many of you here, I was an early adopter of Andrew's campaign. Hopefully there are folks here tonight who are going to have the opportunity to learn firsthand why this campaign is making history across the country. And the first thing I want to do is have you join me in thanking Rick and Katie for opening their beautiful home. And hosting this incredibly gracious reception for Evelyn. And though I know a lot of you know Katie well, for those of you who don't, I did want to take a minute to say a few words about her. So in addition to being an award-winning CEO of an investment management company, she was named a Rising Star of Hedge Funds and an Angel Investor of the Year, and recently Coast Magazine honored her with the 2019 Women of Coast Award for her advocacy on behalf of women and Asian Americans. She's now a full-time philanthropist, and most relevant for tonight, in 2018, she created a PAC called Asian Americans Rising, which is helping to educate and mobilize voters with the goal of turning out 1 million new voters in 2020. So it's my pleasure to welcome Katie.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. There's just so many of you. I'm so pleased that you all came out to support us tonight. I do want to recognize a few people, if I may. My fellow host committee members, Lily, where are you? Lily and Greg, please stand up. They have been super supportive, and you guys have probably received an invitation once or twice from her. Meiji Yang could not be here. Her daughter got sick, but she was also super helpful. We have Julie Diep, if she's here, please wave. The Honorable Alice Van, she's a city council member for the city of Stanton. Jeff Wang and Daniel Change, who could not be here tonight but also supported this event from afar. Catherine Amute could not also be here. She's in Miami, but her husband, Payman, where are you? Wait, yes, is here. So thank you so much for all of your support. And then speaking of husbands, I want to thank my husband, Rick, tonight. He worked so hard today. I mean, all this stuff could not have happened without him. So I want to thank him because I'm always springing this kind of stuff on him without any notice. I also want to thank lots of you here from Asian Americans Rising who are coming to volunteer and support this event. And then I also want to do a shout out to the local Yang Gang. Where are you? Thank you for supporting this event and for all of your help tonight. Oh my gosh, they came out by the dozens to come and help me put this together. So I want to thank them for their endless support and endless energy. So we are all here tonight because Andrew has inspired us to believe that hope is coming. I am touched every day by the despair that I see around us, the bitter division that pulls us away from family and friends. This campaign is definitely a hope campaign, a campaign of possibilities in a future that we can be proud to leave our kids. So I want to call your attention to a couple other people here tonight who are looking to spread hope right here in Orange County. I want to call out Sister Tui Tran. Where are you? Please wave. Tui is a dear friend of mine and who's also an actual real nun, and she is working with me to advance equity and social justice right here in Orange County. Kathia Conless, are you here? Wave, yep. She's over there. She's president of the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance, and she's fighting every day for average Americans to earn a living wage. I want to thank her and acknowledge her work. I also want to acknowledge Jennifer Tang. Please rise and wave. There she is. Jennifer is somebody that we support. She's a candidate for city council in the city of Monterey Park. And then Thai Viet Phan, please wait and wave. She's a candidate for city council for the city of Santa Ana. So thank you all for being here today. So, how many of you watched the impeachment trials this week? I mean, I have to say I've never been more depressed in my life. I can't think of another time where I've thought about term limits as much as I did watching that trial. We desperately need a change in Washington, and change is coming. Hope is coming, and his name is Andrew Yang.
Yeah.
Tonight, I am delighted to introduce you to Andrew's better half. Her name is Evelyn Yang. She's lovely and kind and an accomplished businesswoman in her own right. But more importantly, I feel she is the bedrock of the Yang family. And believe me, she will be the bedrock for the American family as well. So please join me in welcoming the amazing Evelyn Yang.
Yeah!
I've been in Iowa in the snow. And so it's really such a treat to be here in the LA weather with such good company. Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's really an honor to be here. And I want to say that I've only started recently to join Andrew on the campaign trail because we do have 2 little boys at home who keep me pretty busy. But I do love to be with Andrew when I can, mostly because I think I'm pretty useful to him. After 15 years of being together, I'd like to think that I'm his best character witness. And it's funny, when I introduce Andrew on the trail, it's almost like I can say anything. It doesn't really matter. People just want to say, oh, Andrew's married, check. His wife still likes him, check. So I can confirm that yes, Andrew is an awesome person. He's a wonderful husband, father, and friend. He's a man of the highest integrity. He doesn't lie. He cares so much about people. And most importantly, when I met him, he had no intention of running for president. So you might be thinking, then why is Andrew here? And even more incredible, how did this mostly anonymous Asian man with no background in politics rise to where he is now? And to be specific, that is making the next debate stage, rising to 4th in some of the latest national polls, raising $16.5 million in the last quarter with 0 PAC money. To give you some context, that's actually more than what Joe Biden raised in the previous quarter. And so maybe some of you know that he recently won the youth vote in Iowa, which is apparently it's historically an indicator of who wins the election. So, oh, and I also should mention that Andrew has some of the coolest celebrity endorsements anywhere. Maybe cooler. You guys live in LA, so maybe cooler to me. But you know, I'm talking about Dave Chappelle and Elon Musk and Donald Glover, just to name a few. So you might say that Andrew Yang is starting to surge. This is happening not just because Andrew's good at the internet, or because Andrew wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. It's because Andrew's core message of humanity first is resonating throughout the country. He's not motivated by ideology or partisan politics. He says all the time, it's not left, it's not right, it's forward. Many people think of Andrew as a business guy, but he's also a nonprofit guy. He founded and ran a nonprofit called Venture for America for 7 years, where he trained hundreds of young people to start businesses and work at startups in cities across the country that have been decimated by the financial crisis. And while he was helping to create thousands of jobs, he saw the harsh reality on the ground. Americans weren't starting families or businesses because they couldn't pay their bills. Americans have been unfairly burdened with the cost of housing, healthcare, and education. And Americans are depressed, and our life expectancy has been on the decline for 3 years in a row at unprecedented rates. After the cry for help that was the 2016 election, Andrew saw with urgency that we needed a new path forward. And yes, it starts with $1,000 a month. A universal basic income for every adult that he calls the freedom dividend. But this is actually not Andrew's idea. It's an idea that you can trace to the founding of our country with Thomas Paine. He called it the citizen's dividend. And Martin Luther King was actively fighting for a universal basic income as a basic civil right when he was assassinated. The idea nearly became law with bipartisan support in the 70s under Nixon. And one state, a deep red state, Alaska, has had a universal basic income for decades, sourced with oil money. Andrew is a numbers guy, but you don't need to even look at the numbers to know where the biggest gains are going in our economy. All you have to do is walk into any CVS and you see that screens and kiosks are replacing human workers. Or go into any factory and you'll see that it's not wall-to-wall immigrants, it's wall-to-wall robots. And then you hear about companies like Google and Uber that are working on cars and trucks that can drive themselves. Automation and technology are transforming our lives and our livelihoods, upending all of the most common jobs throughout our country. Meanwhile, trillion-dollar tech companies like Amazon are getting richer and richer, but they pay zero or near zero in taxes. Does this make sense to anyone?
No.
And is it their fault that they're not paying taxes?
No.
No, it's our fault. It's our government's fault. A recent study says that our data is now worth more than oil. Did anyone get their data checks in the mail last month? Big data is being built on our backs. We are the contributors and shareholders of this new economy, the wealthiest economy in the history of the world. It only makes sense that we reap some of those gains. What Alaska does with oil money, we can do for the rest of the country with technology money. Now, of course, $1,000 a month can't solve all of our problems. We as a country have a lot of big systemic changes to work on. But if you look into any of Andrew's 150 plus policy proposals, then you know that he fully intends to do this work. But the fact is that the most meaningful way to help people immediately is to give them money. You know, I hate poverty. And I have a feeling you all hate poverty as well. But why have we all grown so comfortable with it? Here in LA, or this is still LA, right?
OC.
We might be far removed from poverty. We might find homelessness a nuisance or a worthy cause where we can make somewhat of a small dent. But the truth is, if we were really honest with ourselves, we know that there is so much more that we should be doing. No one in our country should have nothing. 1/3 of Americans today live in poverty. I'm talking about hungry and homeless children, women stuck in abusive situations, veterans trapped on our streets. In the United States of America, where we have so much wealth concentrated in just a few places, we have the ability to eradicate poverty, and I believe we have a moral obligation as a country to do so. A basic income is the most direct way to solve poverty and provide all Americans with a foundation to build on. And we have a lot of building to do to create a society that works for all of us. But we can't begin building if we don't have a floor. Too many Americans are falling through the cracks through no fault of their own. Right now, just one illness, one job loss, one unexpected bill can send a family spiraling down into poverty, where they are trapped indefinitely. Andrew's message is, let's invest in people. Let's put money in our hands so that we can decide how best to help ourselves and help our families. Let's create the trickle-up economy. From our people and our communities up, it's the idea of humanity first in practice. The freedom dividend is just a foundation. The next step is building and fixing what is broken. And that starts with what we measure, because that defines what we value as a country. We all know that you can't fix what you don't track. What do we measure right now? GDP, the stock market, headline unemployment that doesn't even count people who have dropped out or given up. Andrew often tells people that while he's traveling the country running for president, I'm at home with our 2 boys, one of whom has autism. My job now is harder than anything I experienced working at companies large or small. But what does the market value my work at?
0.
0. That's right. According to GDP, it's 0. And what else doesn't the market value? Caregivers to our aging loved ones, mentors and coaches, organizers and activists, most artists and creatives, local journalists increasingly. Did you know that we put over 2,000 local papers out of business in the last several months? You know what doesn't work well without local journalists?
Democracy.
Democracy. How can you vote on issues in your community if no one is reporting on what is happening in your local community? The market doesn't value what we as citizens care about the most. This includes things like a functional democracy, childhood success rates, health and freedom from substance abuse, the proportion of our elderly who can retire with dignity, or even clean air and clean water. Andrew is not kidding when he says that he will be the first president at the State of the Union to use PowerPoint.
PowerPoint.
And he will show the American people transparently how we are performing on each of these things that matter to us. That is if he is president. The alternative is the status quo. What does our current market value? Banks, pharmaceutical companies, the big tech companies, the big corporations. As these companies grow and grow, so does GDP and the stock market, while people and communities are left behind. Andrew sees this fundamental misalignment, and he's the only one who knows how automation and technology are transforming our society beneath our feet, so that this gap between people and the economy is just growing wider and wider, to where we as a country are in crisis. Andrew articulates what so many of us can feel and know to be true, that our markets, our government, and our institutions no longer serve us. They serve the almighty dollar. Now that our institutions are failing us, who suffers the most? Of course, it's the poor, the marginalized, and the most vulnerable of us. I would put women in this category. Women are overwhelmingly the mothers and the caregivers. We are used to sacrificing, we are used to adversity, and we're used to fighting just to have a say. I recently came forward about sexual assault perpetrated by my doctor when I was pregnant with our first son. This, of course, was traumatic, but what happened next was perhaps even more disturbing. It turned out that this doctor had assaulted dozens and dozens of women throughout his decades of tenure. At one point, he was even arrested, but then allowed back to work the next day with his record quietly expunged. None of us suspected that he was a predator, except for the university hospital, but they cared more about protecting their reputation than their patients. They ultimately used their power and their influence to strike a deal with the DA behind closed doors. They basically bought him an early retirement. I'm telling you about what happened to me not for your sympathy, but as an all too common example of how our institutions are failing us at every turn. In my case, power and privilege won over people and doing the right thing. But this kind of thing happens to people every day. I just happen to experience it in a very personal way. The abuse of power and privilege, and economic value winning over human value. We see this pattern everywhere. We see it when we choose banks over homeowners, corporate polluters over our environment, drug makers over the sick and the addicted, the wealthy over the ordinary, and with the status quo, selling people down the river in all kinds of ways. We can't be the victims in our own democracy. We need to be smarter than that. for ourselves and for the sakes of our children. This is the change that Andrew is fighting for. He is a parent and a patriot, and he sees clearly the problems that are afflicting our country. We don't trust our institutions because our institutions don't serve us. They work for the bottom line of the big corporations, and that is no way to run a country. How many of you saw the segments of Andrew with Dave Chappelle in Iowa recently?
Yeah.
He has been an incredible supporter. He's actually running around doing fundraisers for the campaign. And Dave, in all his wisdom, said that Andrew is not just the right person for president because he has the best ideas. He said that Andrew is the right person for president because he's emotionally what our country needs right now. And I think Dave is totally spot on. It is crazy how divided our country has become. It is perhaps our greatest challenge today, bringing this country together. But literally almost all talk in politics brings about further division. Andrew champions big fundamental change, without rhetoric or outrage, without shaming or contempt. He's building his broad coalition with math, common sense, humor, and humility. It's why the more people hear from him, the more they want to hear from him. He's too genuine. He makes too much sense. And then you realize that this is what we've been missing from politics. Well, 15 years ago, I may not have thought to myself, this man is going to be the president of the United States. Today, the very same qualities that made me fall in love with him have me absolutely convinced that he is the best person to lead our country in the 21st century. Lastly, I just want to thank the people here today. Some of you are original Yang Gang, and some of you are newer to the gang, but you guys are the lifeblood of this campaign. And you know it's not mainstream media or the party that's driving forward this campaign. It's you guys. You guys are the backbone, doing all the heavy lifting, spreading Andrew's message, and it's working. People are paying attention. Literally, people left and right are discovering him. So your volunteering matters, your yanging people matters, your donations matter. So please continue to give and to fuel. You are what keeps Andrew going. And you know that Andrew has been on the trail for over a year. We have 2 little boys. He is sorely missed. So the work you do is making our sacrifice as a family worth it. So thank you so much, so deeply from the bottom of my heart. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.